Okay, hello and welcome back to the Narky Parky podcast episode 2. How are you all doing? I hope you're all doing fine. Hope you're all well, keeping each other safe and having a good time. Okay, so episode 1, we talked about football. Hope you enjoyed that. And this episode, we are talking about television, and more specifically, we're going to be speaking about the Game of Thrones season finale that aired on Sunday night. I'm a bit late to the party with probably most YouTube channels and podcasts talking about it already because, you know, they have time and I don't have as much time, and it's not my job to do this anyway. But yeah, finally getting round to talking about it. I was meant to be doing it with a friend, but unfortunately that didn't come to fruition. So it's just going to be me on my own. So I'm going to give a rundown of the final episode and talk about each scene and what I thought about each scene and my overall feeling of the episode, of the whole series, the new series 8, and how I felt about the show as a whole. So let's begin at the beginning of the episode. We pick up pretty much immediately after Daenerys has killed probably the majority of King's Landing and its people, and we see Tyrion walking through the main street of King's Landing, ashes falling to the ground, bodies are burnt everywhere, people are just walking, there are so many walking wounded, people have just huge burns on their faces and on their backs. And then we come to Jon and Grey Worm, who have a confrontation about why they shouldn't be killing. Jon believes that the Lannister guards that they've got prisoned, they've won the war, they've won the Battle of King's Landing, there is no reason to kill more people. But obviously Grey Worm feels differently because Daenerys has told him to kill everyone who follows Cersei Lannister. So it was a good confrontation, but it's just it was fine. It's obviously needed. It's a good start because then obviously shows the conflict from one side, where you see that Daenerys has now turned into something that she tried desperately not to become, and the other side where it's us against them basically. So then we get to my favourite scene of the entire episode, which was Tyrion going down into the the basement, the crypt underneath. It's not a crypt. It's the cellar below the Red Keep, and when he finds Jaime and Cersei's bodies under all the bricks. That was a really, really difficult scene and acted brilliantly by Peter Dinklage. That was just his reaction when he saw, obviously he felt nothing for Cersei, but when he saw Jaime and what he'd done, it was such, like, you could just Tyrion wouldn't have felt shamed, but he just would have been so upset that why did Jaime go back to Cersei when he could have done so much more. And obviously Jaime was his closest friend really throughout the entire show, and he was devastated clearly when he saw them dead, when he saw Jaime dead at least. But yeah, that was my favourite scene of the episode. Like, no talking, just sheer emotion and fantastic acting from Peter Dinklage. I'm wondering, because Lena Headey got paid $1 million per episode, does that count as an appearance? Her dead body, would they have used Lena Headey, or would they have used a doll or a big version of her? Would they? Because if that counts as an appearance, that's $1 million that Lena Headey has just got, and that's really impressive. So fair play to her. Okay, so then moving on from my favourite scene, we then get to Daenerys' speech. And so now it's so clear from what she's saying to the Unsullied and the Dothraki that she has now become the Mad Queen. Like, she's burnt down one city, and she's now taken over Westeros, but now she wants to take over the whole world. And it's just obvious now that, Jon and Tyrion are looking at each other like, this surely needs to come to an end. Obviously, Tyrion stands up to the Mad Queen Daenerys Targaryen. He takes off his Hand of the Queen pin, throws it to the ground, and obviously Daenerys knew that he released Jaime when he got captured by the Unsullied when trying to get to King's Landing first before them. And she arrested him for treason, and at that point I thought, oh no, Tyrion is going to die on the spot, and which would have been really shocking. It would have been a pretty interesting thing to happen in the episode. I don't know if it would have benefited the episode in hindsight. I'm not sure. The episode probably would have gone a completely different way if Tyrion ended up being Dracarys'd by Daenerys, sorry. But she just arrested him, and Jon went to speak to him, which was probably another really good scene. I enjoyed Tyrion trying to convince Jon that he needs to do not the impossible, but he needs to come to his senses, stop sheepishly following Daenerys now just because she's the queen, and get off this whole loyalty bandwagon. And Tyrion just trying to convince Jon to kill Daenerys, which of course he eventually does. And then, again, fantastic acting from Peter Dinklage. He stole the show. He stole the show in this episode. So then we get to Dany and Jon in the throne room, which was a beautiful shot with it. Obviously, it looks like snow, but with all the ash falling to the ground, and she touches the throne. But this is where my problems with the episode start to begin. Up until now, it's been a decent episode. Like, I've always enjoyed the season finales for Game of Thrones because it's been a lot slower, a lot more, a lot of character development and setup for the next season has begun. But obviously, there's no longer going to be a next season. This is the final episode, so they have to wrap everything up. But it's sticking true to form. It's a lot slower than the previous episode, which is always a huge battle normally. So Dany touches the Iron Throne. I thought she would have sat down in it when Jon came in. But then Daenerys starts talking to him about, how we can rule together. We can, we are the people who are always right. So Daenerys, even then, you can tell she's become the Mad Queen. She's done a complete 180 very quickly. But then, I could see it coming from a mile away. I think I predicted this before the season begun. I said either Daenerys is going to kill Jon or Jon is going to kill Daenerys. One of them is going to die. And it was obviously with the whole Mad Queen turn, it was Jon that killed Daenerys, which had to happen in this episode. There was no way it wasn't going to happen. But the way it happened, obviously it was so easy to see it happen. It was going to happen, and that's fine. But she went out like it was nothing. We saw. I know there's a huge difference between Derek Dondarrion, or Derek, whatever his bloody name is, Triple D. It's not Derek, but I call him Derek. Beric Dondarrion and Cersei Lannister. When Beric died, he got stabbed probably at least 6 times, maybe more, probably a lot more, by White Walkers. And that was in the back, in the legs, in the sides. And Dany takes one stab to the liver and dies almost instantaneously. She doesn't even say a word. She doesn't really look like she's portraying any emotion. That's not anything wrong with Emilia Clarke's acting, I don't think. It's just it's like she almost dies immediately, but she is this frail woman who is protected by these huge dragons. Obviously she only had one dragon by the end of it, but she was a young woman, not very well. She couldn't fight or anything like that, but she always had her dragons. But she didn't even, the writers, I wonder if the writers thought like whether Daenerys should say something just before, she fades away, but she just said nothing. She just looked at Jon. It must have been for about 2 seconds, and then she died. So it was a really, really quick death, and it just obviously it had no build up, which is a real problem for the whole series because there was only 6 episodes, but it just had no build up, and it was just over so quickly. And then you're like, oh, Daenerys is dead, and then obviously Drogon somehow, whatever, you probably can because it's his mother. Drogon senses it, and then I was thinking, oh, this would be fantastic. Daenerys and Jon die. This would be really good. This would actually make a good ending to the show, because then that's both the people who are technically next in line to the throne dead, and then what will happen there? But Drogon decides to burn the Iron Throne, even though a dragon surely has no sense of what the Iron Throne means and what the Iron Throne is, unless if Daenerys has showed a picture on on Cersei's Instagram to Drogon and be like, look, this is what we want. So, and then, I don't know, Drogon thought, oh yeah, Cersei's dead, Daenerys is dead now, no one can it was either going to be her sitting on it or no one's going to be sitting on it. What would have worked a hell of a lot more if Daenerys, I'm getting confused because they're both blonde. If Daenerys, told Drogon to burn down the Iron Throne before she was killed by Jon, that would have been a really good thing to happen, because that would have been the whole continuing story of wanting to break the wheel. And, people who have become power hungry, this is what Daenerys was striving not to be, and she now became power hungry, and all she ever really wanted was the throne in the end, and she almost got it. So yeah, Drogon burning down the throne really didn't work for me. It was just, in a realistic world, a dragon can't have that cognitive ability to think that throne is important and that throne means a hell of a lot to a lot of people, so therefore I'm going to burn it down. Another thing that could have been really good is if Drogon tried to burn Jon and Jon lives, obviously, because he's a Targaryen and he should be immune to fire, just like Daenerys. So that would have been a great thing. Like, all of his clothes get burnt off and Drogon's a bit confused because he doesn't know, but maybe Drogon does know. I don't know. Maybe he's just a lot of it. Maybe Drogon is a super smart dragon and the writers haven't let us know that he is a super smart dragon. But anyway, so Daenerys dies, and then we cut, and then the Drogon picks up Daenerys and then flies away, and then we cut to a few weeks later. We're not sure how long, but it's probably like 3-4 weeks later. And then we get the whole small council. Well, it's not the small council, but it's the lords and ladies of Westeros left. And obviously there's Sam, Uncle Ed. I don't know his other name. Sansa, Arya, Bran, Gendry is there. Brienne, Robin Arryn. That was a great thing to see. Robin Arryn had a super glow up, man. He looks fresh. And a few others as well. And Grey Worm brings out Tyrion, and basically they decide who's going to be the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. And then they decide, because he has the best stories, because he knows everything that's going on, because he knows the past, he knows the future, he knows what could be, what will be, and what already has been, is Bran. Of all the fucking people to put on the wheelie Iron Throne is Bran. Oh, I'm really unsure about this choice for the person on the Iron Throne. Like, this season, Bran was one of my favourite characters just because he had some of the best one-liners. And he was really funny, like in the Battle of Winterfell against the White Walkers, when he was talking to Theon and he said, "I'm going to go now," and then he just walks off into a pigeon or whatever, and just flies and goes to see where the Night King is. That was really funny. And the things we do for love line in episode 2, that was a really good callback, actually, because that was said in the first episode ever. So yeah, Bran as the king, I just can't see it. I feel like it should have been Sansa who should have sat on the Iron Throne in the end. She probably would have been the most suited ruler if it wasn't going to be Jon, because he's technically the true heir. But if it's not Jon, if it can't be Jon, then it has to be, for me, it had to be Sansa. She would have been the best choice. But they give it to Bran, someone who says, "I don't want the throne. I can't have the throne because I'm the three-eyed raven." But he's like, "Oh, I've come all this way anyway. Why not?" He says, "Why do you think I've come here?" or something like that. And yeah, he ends up on the fucking Iron Throne. I actually joked about getting him an access ramp on Twitter, which you can follow me on Twitter at Narky Parky 97. I said if Bran gets the Iron Throne, they should get him an access ramp, but he now is, his chair is the Iron Throne technically, or it's just a throne. So yeah, Bran, I just can't believe that they went with Bran to be king of the Six Kingdoms, because Sansa, who now becomes the queen in the north, which I actually quite liked. I think that was a good choice. If they're not going to give her a title for Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, then obviously make her Queen in the North, which they did, and the North is now an independent state. Whatever. So yeah, Sansa becomes Queen in the North, and Arya sails west. That was pretty cool. I actually think they are definitely going to do a spin-off show for that. They're probably going to leave it a few years. I think they should allow Maisie Williams to, mature in her years a bit. I know she's like 20. I think she's already like 20 or 21, so maybe she won't grow up facially much more now. But I think leave it a few years. Let us reminisce about Arya as a character. Like, don't just jump straight into that spin-off. Leave it for maybe 5 years, 6 years, and then come back to it. And like, we can see it as an older person, and then you can just not make up new lore, but just have new lands, new people, just completely new characters, and new everything. Just make it completely new, and that'd be really good. Just leave it for a long time though. Let the interest of the character of Arya develop over a number of years. So yeah, and then moving on from that, we then get to see, Jon gets sent to the Night's Watch. We find out from Tyrion, who is now the hand of the king to Bran. So yeah, Jon gets sent back to the Night's Watch. So his lineage doesn't even fucking mean anything now, because the Unsullied, they're just really annoying in this episode. So yeah, they just mean nothing. It just means nothing, his lineage now, and he's being sent to the Night's Watch, never to be seen again. So he's going to remain north of the Wall. And the funny thing is about that, when I was watching someone I watch on YouTube did a review. He's been doing a review of every single episode of Game of Thrones this season, and he talked about how that visual shot of Jon looking back at the the gate closing behind him as he's gone north of the wall now. And he's just like, oh no, I'm never going to come back south of the wall again unless I can just walk through the massive hole that the Night King's dragon made. So he could literally, he doesn't have to go back through the gate. He can just walk through the massive gap in the wall, which would be really funny, actually. I'd love to see that just for like 5 seconds, a 5-second clip of Jon just walking through the wall. But yeah, it's just stuff like that. The writers have been very forgetful this season, haven't they, about some things. But yeah, so that'd be really funny if Jon just decides, oh, I'm technically not allowed south of the wall again, but I will just walk through the wall and no one will probably ever find out. So yeah, so the small council, and that's obviously made up of Tyrion as Hand of the King. Bronn is Master of Coin. I don't know how he earned that title. All he ever did was spend it on hookers. Sam is Grand Maester, even though there are so many more people in the Citadel more qualified than him. Brienne is Lord of the Armies or something like that. Sir Davos was Shipkeeper or something like that. And then there was one more person who I've forgotten. Shit. Oh well. And then I've just written a note here. The stupid fucking book. This bit. So the stupid fucking book. Oh god, this is when I just gave up on the episode, because I could kind of see it happening. I could really see them doing it, but I thought, nah, they're not going to bother because it'd be really stupid, and they're going to get compared to their biggest comparative thing in terms of like fantasy and lore, which is Lord of the Rings. So when Sam brings in the book, A Song of Ice and Fire, to the small council's table and says that, oh, the Grand Maester wrote it, but I had a helping hand or something like that. It's just exactly like Bilbo and Frodo in Lord of the Rings writing their journeys about what they'd been doing in Middle-earth. And I was just like, why has this happened? And why would it be called A Song of Ice and Fire when A Song of Ice and Fire is obviously in reference to Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen? Why would it be called A Song of Ice and Fire? Surely you just call it a Game of Thrones. That's surely what you would call it. But anyway, that bit really annoyed me because it's just people predicted that, saying, oh, they're going to do it as, they're going to do it. And I was like, no, surely they won't do it just because the irony of it would be far too much. And yet they did it. I thought it was a really dumb thing to do. And then Bran walks in, which is really, walks in, he gets pushed in by Sir Pod, who's now a knight. Go on, Pod and his magic cock. And he just points out that we need a Master of Whisperers. Even though he can see everything, there is no need for a Master of Whisperers because he is the Three-Eyed Raven and he doesn't need people to whisper stuff. He doesn't need that. He can be that. Surely he can pull double duty. He's not spending much of his time doing anything else other than warging into pigeons and trying to find Drogon. Which again, why did we not see Bran find Drogon? Or at least try to find Drogon. And then we could have seen what Drogon did with Daenerys' body. I forgot to mention, when Drogon was touching Daenerys, like nudging her, like not realising that she was dead, or slowly realising that she was dead, that was a really good moment. That was the one bit in that scene which I really enjoyed, which was Drogon nudging Daenerys, trying to get her back up. But it was quite a really, really sad moment. But yeah, just then he burnt the throne, and that really annoyed me. Jon Pet's ghost. There we go. For all you little shits who are so pissed off that he didn't pet Ghost in one of the episodes, he got to do it in the end because he's a good boy. But yeah, okay. So that's pretty much it. Arya sails west. Jon heads north of the wall. Sansa is queen in the north. and Bran the Broken. Bran, whose dick doesn't work, is now king of the Six Kingdoms. Fantabidozy. Alright, so overall, this episode, for me, I was just so underwhelmed by this episode. I feel like they could have done... It's just a shame that... I don't know why. If someone can tell me why in the comments below, why they did only 6 episodes this season, that'd be really good, because I still don't know why they only did 6 episodes. It's just because it's just been too rushed now. It's just been too rushed. The last 2 episodes, I thought it was going fine up until like halfway through episode 5, and then when Daenerys decided to burn King's Landing, you could just tell then, for me anyway, they just completely rushed everything, and there was like 1 episode to go, and Daenerys just died with a whimper. She just went out like a little bitch, really. So yeah, they really needed. They probably needed another season, maybe another 2 seasons, and 10 episodes. They probably could have done it in 10 episodes for this season, but they really needed more time to allow each situation to develop properly. So when Daenerys decided to burn King's Landing down, we understood fully why she did it. When Jon decided to kill Daenerys, we understand fully why he did it, and we allowed a build up to it and attention to it. But yeah, it was just, for me, it was just kind of underwhelming, and it was such a shame, because Game of Thrones is a great show. The series as a whole, I actually really enjoyed this series for the most part. For me, the best episode was probably episode 4, when they're all celebrating after defeating the White Walkers, and then we get the whole moment when Euron kills Rhaegal. I thought that was an excellent episode. That was actually one of my favourite episodes, because I had that slow half and then a really quick final half. And the scene with when Missandei gets her head lobbed off, that was really good. But they underutilized Cersei massively this season. Cersei has always been my favourite character. She is the best, because it's like she falls into 4 categories. You either love to love her, you love to hate her, you hate to love her, or you hate to hate her. And I just loved to hate Cersei. She was the best throughout, even in Series 8, throughout the whole thing, she was the best written character by a mile. They never slowed down with Cersei and how she was written. She was always the best. In Season 7, episode 7, in the Dragon Pit, that is one of the best scenes in Game of Thrones, in my opinion. And also the scene when Cersei and Jaime are talking to each other, and Cersei reveals that, oh no, it's just a ploy to I'm not sending my armies north to help them in the war against the White Walkers. It's just a ruse. And you really feared that Jaime was going to die. Then obviously he didn't, but Lena Headey is a phenomenal actor, and she needs more mainstream roles in Hollywood now, because she is phenomenally good, one of the best around. And even with her lack of screen time in Series 8, she still managed to kill it every single second, and she was still the best thing about each scene she was in, regardless of what you made of it. She was the best part of each scene she was in. She was fantastic. But yeah, I'm struggling to... This is why I needed someone else to bounce off this podcast for, because I'm struggling of things to say. But overall, I think this series, I'd probably give it a... because the ending was lackluster, and the last half of episode 5 I didn't really enjoy. So I'm going to give it probably overall... a a 7 out of 10 for Series 8. I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time with it. You know, I was taking the show for what it was. You know, it's now it's a fantasy epic. But the last 1.5 episodes, they kind of blew it, and they really just rushed everything like super fast, faster than they had been doing this season. They just rushed it super quickly. I think they mucked up when they decided to leave the battle against the White Walkers for episode 3, and like they defeat the White Walkers, and then you've only got 3 episodes left. They should have done it in episode 2 probably, if they were going to. If they had 10 episodes, they probably would have done it in probably episode 9, and then do another season if they were doing it I say doing it properly. What do I know? But that's what they probably should have done. You know, had an extra season. But yeah, honestly, that's pretty much all I can really say about that. I was really disappointed with the last episode, but still the series as a whole, the cinematography, the costumes, the set designs, nearly everything was just unbelievable. So Game of Thrones is probably, in terms of cinematography, it's probably the best I've ever seen for a TV show. It is unbelievably good. That shot in the final episode when Daenerys is walking to speak to the Unsullied, and then Drogon's wings open up behind her, just fantastic. But yeah, you can't have a good episode on just cinematography alone. But yeah, okay, so I think I'm going to end it there. So those are my thoughts on Series 8, Episode 6. Overall, Game of Thrones as a whole, excellent show. Really excellent show. You know, I think Season 4 was my favourite. Had loads of... Season 4 or Season 6, I think, were probably my favourite. And the bad characters, they were just the best. They were always so well written. Joffrey was incredible. Cersei, as I mentioned earlier, my favourite character. Ramsay Bolton, Roose Bolton, and even like some people who weren't really bad people but had bad intentions. Stannis Baratheon, great character. And yeah, I kind of lean towards the bad. Well, I say lean towards the bad people. I hated every single one of them, but they were the best written characters. So I guess it's easier to write hatred in characters. But anyway, so yeah, it's an excellent show. It's over now, so we've got to move on to something else. All right, thanks ever so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe, like the video if you want, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next podcast.